Today is kind of an exciting day around here. I am going to be turning out some of the horses on pasture for the first time.
Come here, buddy. Come here.
Unfortunately, Huckleberry caught the whiff of something and he went off across the neighbor's field, so I've got to track him down before he gets too far gone. The area that he's sniffing around is where one of the coyote dens is located. Luckily, I was able to grab his attention before he went on a serious walkabout.
Come on, let's go. Come on. Come here.
He thought he was in trouble, which technically he is because he knows he's not supposed to be chasing coyotes. So for this morning, he has lost his privileges to be out while I turn out the horses.
Come on. Come on.
He will get to spend the rest of the morning in the truck thinking about his bad behavior. This is a fairly typical springtime activity for Huckleberry. With him getting older, I do keep a very close eye on him when he goes off on his little coyote escapades. It is around 7 a.m., so it's the perfect time to get these horses out on the grass for about 15 minutes maybe.
Hey, boys. Be good boys.
The boys are going to be the first ones out on their little grass patch.
Hey, come on, boys. Come on, boys. Come on. Come on, Stewie. Come on, boys. Come on. Come on.
I'm pretty surprised they're not more excited about this morning. I usually don't come to the barn this early, so this is a little bit against protocol. Typically, the first couple of days, these boys don't do a lot of running around. They are just really excited to get their lips on some fresh grass. This is a tiny temporary pasture. It does share a fence with Nigel, and he usually gets pretty sassy about seeing the horses out. One of the reasons I wait so long to get the horses out on the grass is because I'm very cautious about the amount of sugars that are in the grass. First thing right in the morning before the sun comes up is when the sugar is the lowest in the grass, so it's the perfect time to get these horses introduced slowly. Throughout the day, as the sun shines down on the grass, it will start to store sugars to grow. When the sun goes down and there's no more energy from the sun to collect, the grass will use all that stored sugar to grow. So by the time morning rolls around, the sugar should be at the lowest point. Making sure you don't toss your horses out at any time during the day right in the spring is very important to help prevent laminitis. Goose is a little bit prone to sensitivities in the grass. Studman and Nigel are also very sensitive, so I have to be extra careful with those guys. And it looks like Goose has been putting his head through the fence and rubbing out his mane hair. Because I do want to ease these guys out onto the grass, they will just go out for a few minutes while I get everybody else their hay and get the grain ready for this morning. Goose could barely contain his excitement this morning and pushed Whiplash and I out of the way. He acts like he's been starved for the last couple of hours, when obviously he has quite a bit of reserve stored up. Whiplash is finally starting to let go the last of his winter hair. I had big plans to introduce all the horses to the pasture for the spring, but I did check the weather this morning and we will be getting some more snow in the next couple of days. So these horses will have kind of a sporadic introduction to the grass. Naturally, Tiny was upset about the off schedule this morning as well.
You gotta settle, buddy. Settle down, bud. Settle.
Skeletor was acting extra crazy this morning. The other horses were not running around at all, but Skeletor was just really excited about a change in our routine.
Whoa, buddy.
The weather was really nice overnight, so he did spend all night out in this arena. He should not have very much energy left today. The farther along in the season we get, the more I'm thinking it might be better if Skeletor is just by himself over at my quarantine pen. He is right now at a very important part of his rehab where he does still need to stay quiet, even though he is a lot more sound. It is going to be extremely hard for me to get any of the horses worked if he runs around every time someone gets a little bit excited around here. We are supposed to start getting a little bit of rain at around 9 o'clock this morning, so I have 2 hours to get all my chores done and get the horses back into their dry lots. Nigel has been coming in at night, and I wanted him to get a little bit of turnout before I stick him back in his stall. My haystack is looking on the slim side, but I should have enough hay for the rest of the summer. Today I do have to crawl up on top and push some hay down for these horses. This is how I tweaked my ankle last time, so I'm going to be extra careful to make sure I don't hurt it again. It is feeling better, but I think it's going to take a few months for it to feel back to normal. It is kind of nice to get up a little bit early and see how pretty the mountains are this time of day, especially with a storm rolling in. With all of the breakfast hay gathered up, I'm just going to deposit this amongst all of the other horses. Studman isn't getting turned out on grass. I have to be extra careful with him, and Skeletor is going to stay in his dry lot for today. I know when I turn him out on grass, he is going to run and jump and play, and I just don't want him to slip and hurt himself again. So all of the horses in the barn are going to get their breakfast in their little hay bags. Skeletor has been coming in the barn when the weather's nasty, but I have really been trying to get him as much turnout time as possible. And I can already tell that his leg is a little bit sore from all of his running around this morning. Even though he has plenty to do and lots of toys, he is starting to get bored again. I also noticed he rubbed a huge chunk of his mane out by sticking his head through the fence. He does have his own little grass pasture over here that I got ready for him, but I didn't want him to be so excited running around. I also did not get the fence charger up, so that needs to be up before I turn him out. I'm surprised I didn't hear more of a ruckus from Nigel, but him and Stewie got into it and started playing with each other a little bit. These two have been turned out together before, and him and Stewie just like to pester each other. Stewie is actually the kind of horse that gets along with pretty much everybody. He does pester Skeletor a little bit too much for them to be turned out together right now. Stewie might get turned out with Scarlet this summer in the smaller dry lot and pasture.
Nigel. Oh, sorry, buddy.
Poor Nigel had no idea that I was watching what he was doing. With his eyesight getting worse, I do make sure to let him know that I'm around. But sometimes I do still give him a little bit of a scare, and right there Stewie did sneak up on him too. He seems to be staying pretty comfortable even though he is losing a little bit more of his sight. In order to make it a little bit easier for him, I have started pushing him into a stall to catch him every day. I think a big part of the reason that he runs away from me all of the time is he's just a little bit scared about the open space now. He has been in this pen for a few years, so he is pretty comfortable with the boundaries. In order to get some of the grass eaten down, I have been turning Frisco out here when Nigel is inside at night. I have also noticed that Tiny spends most of the day with Nigel too. She basically just sits on the fence rail and hunts for mice and keeps an eye on him. I'm a little bit surprised that the other horses didn't come over to say hello to Nigel, but they are pretty preoccupied with the grass. Tiny seems to be a little bit angry that I'm here so early today.
Feisty.
It seems like she's already pestering me to go in and turn on the shaky plate for her. It also looks like Prim has started to rub out a lot of her mane as well. It is really tricky to put Prim out on grass in the spring because I don't really have a good place for her. She is also very smart about the temporary fence, so she has escaped before. Frisco Bill will get turned out with her as soon as the weather gets a tiny bit nicer.
Frisco Bill?
The ground is still a little bit wet in her temporary pasture. I have been trying to get Frisco out on as much grass as possible because he is starting to look a little bit on the dingy side. I did start giving him some senior feed, which he is not really reacting to very well. He's getting some fat deposits by his tail and his skin is really, really dry. I switched him back over to his regular mash diet. Hopefully he will start looking a little bit better soon. I brushed him yesterday and this is all like dead, gross skin on him. Frisco is used to being on a very low sugar diet, so the senior feed is creating a little bit of extra fat on him as well. Nigel did start looking the same way and I took him off the senior feed, but it looks like Frisco Bill is going to go back to regular mash as well.
Sorry.
He is a good body condition, but overall he just does not look as good as he should. With all of the inside horses fed, I'm going to go ahead and put some hay out for these boys. They've already been out for about 10 minutes, which is about how long I want them to stay out for, so I'm going to hustle through these chores. It has been super nice to harrow the dry lot every couple of days, but these horses still poop right where I put their hay. A lot of people still ask me why I don't use hay feeders, and they usually do cause more harm than good. It is one more thing for these guys to get hurt on. And there are a ton of studies about the amount of dust and debris that they end up inhaling when they are fed in any kind of container. In the grand scheme of things, a few stray turd piles aren't going to hurt the horses. Getting pneumonia or a nasty laceration from a feeding trough would be way worse. Scarlet, however, does like to keep her hay nice and tidy, so she does get a little feeder. She is about the only horse I have that won't take it out of the feeder and spread it all around. Whiplash and Goose get fed off of the ground. Whiplash actually does have a lot of trouble with allergies, so it's important that he's able to shake the hay out just in case there's any lingering dust. With the weather getting pretty nasty out, Tiny is on me to hurry up and finish the chores. My horses only get fed hard feed once a day. They do get a ration balancer and some vitamins. This time of year when I'm introducing everybody to the pasture, I use it to entice them back into their dry lots. Pretty much all of the horses don't get more than a pound of hard feed. This ration balancer is super concentrated and it just has all the vitamins and minerals that they actually need. Hopefully the boys won't be too hard to get in because it does look like it's going to start to rain pretty soon.
Come on, boys. Boys, come on.
Goose and Whiplash are pretty excited for the ration balancer this morning. They are pretty simple-minded creatures, so it's not hard to entice them back into their dry lot. These boys were only out for about 10 minutes, which is perfect. I am a little bit worried that all of the rest of the boys aren't going to want to come in. And it looks like it did start to rain already. Most of the time I'm able to stay on task, but some days I do end up driving around in circles when I forget or lose things.
Oh man.
It appears that my feed scoop is the latest casualty. Every time I end up driving around doing loop-de-loops, I think about ways that I can make feeding this many horses more efficient when I finally get to build my own place. The more organized the horses are, the less opportunity there will be for me to lose things between here and there. I pretty much know that little Gus is going to be the first one back into the dry lot.
Gussie!
He will never miss a meal. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you'll notice that Gus almost always has his ears pinned back at feeding time.
Come on, Stu.
I do think at one point in his life he was out with a bunch of horses and maybe had to fight for his food. I have had him a few years and he still acts like I might forget to feed him some days. I did have pretty good timing today because as soon as I locked the boys in their dry lot, it did start raining a lot harder.
Yes. Pete. Okay, Pete.
As usual, Pete is suspicious of what I'm doing.
Gus, Gus.
Gus was also upset that I was interrupting his breakfast. It is pretty warm down here, but up on the mountains it does look like we're gonna get some new snow. I did have some fun plans for today, but with it rain/snowing all morning, I probably won't get those done.
Pete.
This time of year can be super frustrating because as soon as you get all of your big chores done, it seems like we get a rogue snowstorm.
Pedo.
With Nigel missing a lot of his hair since I did just clip him, I do have to catch him up and put him back in his stall. Because he is convinced that Prim is now his mare, I have been locking her in the barn when I go to catch him. A few of you have asked why I don't put her and Scarlet together. Prim is one that I'm not planning on keeping for very much longer. As soon as she started under saddle and has a pretty good grasp of the basics, I will probably sell her. Prim is the kind of horse that lots of people can get along with, so it's a little bit selfish for me to keep her when there are so many other horses that need help that are not easy to handle. Frisco Bill does not like this part of my new system for catching Nigel.
Come on, Nigel.
I do corral Nigel into Frisco's run and then into his stall where it's pretty easy for me to get a halter on him. I have done this a bunch of times and he knows exactly where he's supposed to go. Recently, he has been scaring Frisco Bill. Even though he is much smaller than him, Nigel can be a little bit of a stinker sometimes. And this usually doesn't happen, but these two boys are good enough friends that they don't cause too much of a ruckus when they're in the same stall together.
What are you boys doing?
Frisco is definitely more scared of Nigel than Nigel is of Frisco. I don't think I can safely catch Nigel with Frisco in there, so I'm gonna have to wiggle my way around and get Frisco to come out so Nigel can be in here by himself. Frisco is too worried about Prim to stay in the stall for too long, and Nigel let me catch him up nice and easy. By the time I caught Nigel and got him in his own stall with his little blanket on, the rain was really starting to come down. I do still have to catch up Skeletor and Scarlet and put them inside. Frisco Bill gets to come back in his stall next to his mare. I will clean the stalls inside, but it's looking like I might just leave these outside runs for tomorrow. Like I said earlier in the video, a few stray turds here and there aren't going to kill these horses. With this crazy weather, sometimes it's just unrealistic for me to stand out in the pouring down, freezing rain and clean up the manure every single day. And that is just the reality of living in an environment like this. The turds will still be here tomorrow for me to clean up, and these pens are big enough that they're not causing these horses any harm.
Come on, buddy.
After I clean up all the inside stalls and have the horses tucked into the barn, I do turn on the shaky plate to loosen up a bit. I do happen to notice that these boots are probably on their last leg. These are just my everyday boots, so they do need to be replaced quite often. These are Ariots and they definitely don't last as long as custom boots that I have. It is so funny how Tiny comes as soon as she hears me turn on the shaky plate now. I'm gonna take a little bit of a break and rearrange my day. It does seem like it would be a good day to go boot shopping. So I'm gonna put some good vibes out in the universe for a good sale or maybe a nice lightly used pair at the thrift store. Thank you guys so much for watching and stay tuned for the next video.